All right guys, welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to go over the spike in maintenance costs that we're experiencing with our 2005 Audi A4 Avant Ultra Sport. We've owned this car since new, so this car is getting on 18 years old, and it just seems in the last 3 years, the maintenance costs have really spiked up. The end result is this car is riding so smooth right now. It's such a great car. We're still happy with it after 18 years. If you want to watch a full review that my wife and I did, you can see that in the description below or in the box popping up now. Back in 2020, the car had about 98,000 miles on it, and at that point it was about 15 years old. And one of the things that we've noticed leading up to that point is that the ride of the car was incredibly harsh. It was harsher than in my Porsche 911 GTS, and that is not right. So we went to JC Auto in Scarsdale, New York. Their team there are excellent technicians. They're super nice people, and I always feel like I'm being given the honest truth at fair prices, and they're not pressuring you to do anything, but they will point out things that are more important than other things to take care of. So if you have an older car or even a newer car, check out JC Auto in Scarsdale, New York. And I'm not getting anything from them for saying that. I use them for all of the repairs that I'm mentioning in this video. They diagnosed the problem, the suspension, the shocks were shot, the leading and trailing control arms in the front were damaged, the bump stops, all of the shock assemblies needed to be replaced.
So basically you're losing the gas in between the shock.
Gotcha.
And you're basically just, when you're hitting over bumps, you're more doing spring than actual shock.
Gotcha.
So you get more of that hopping.
Right.
Around high turns, you might feel a little bit of bouncing.
Yes.
You know, which is just it's not sitting on the ground flush.
Gotcha.
You know? The other indication, if you want to look here.
Yeah.
You can't see it, but you can feel it if you rub your hands like that.
Yeah.
You feel that choppiness.
That
means that, like I'm saying, when you're going around that turns, you're feeling that bouncing, or you're getting a bounce. The wheels actually hop in. That's why you're getting that deterioration in the tire, because the inside is normally where you feel it, because that's where the pressure of the shock is. And where we look at the shocks is look at the interior of the tire, and if you feel that ribbon, then you know that the shock is getting weak because it's not feeling it flush to the ground.
Gotcha, yeah. And what we decided to do for budgetary reasons, honestly, is to do it in piecemeal. So we dealt with the front end of the car first, all of the whole shock assemblies, bump stops, leading and trailing control arms, all of that is replaced. All of the shocks were replaced.
You can tell they're just a little shot. Yeah, like see this one, this one goes down even easier.
Wow.
So this is the one that's really shot.
Gotcha.
This one here is, we got a little bit.
Just a little bit left. While they were in the front of the car, ooh, nice turbo. While they were dealing with the front of the car, the brake rotors and brake pads replaced, and we had them perform a full brake flush. They did a 4-wheel alignment to make sure everything was back to factory spec, and we were on the road again. We could have opted to have more aggressive shocks and springs done to the car at that time, but we decided against that because the roads here in New York are so rough. The Ultra Sport, which is the version of the car we have, already has more performance-oriented suspension setup. So we decided to keep everything as stock as possible. So after that work was done, the rest of 2020 was non-eventful, normal oil changes. We did have to replace the battery. Fast forward to the end of 2021, I was doing a long road trip from New York to Baltimore, and on the return trip on the New Jersey Turnpike, the check engine light came on and the engine really started to sputter, and it seemed like it was losing power. It didn't have the pickup that it normally has, and it was clearly a major problem in my view. I didn't know what was going on. It was late at night. I'm in the middle of nowhere in New Jersey, so I limped the car all the way home, which may or may not have been the smart thing to do, to push it like that. It may have been smarter to pull over and have it towed. Nonetheless, I got home safely and had JC Auto diagnose the problem, and the third of the 4 ignition coils had failed.
Well, what I like to do is, since it's missing on a cylinder, you take one out, you swap it with another coil, swap it in another cylinder, And then if the code follows that cylinder, then you know that that's going to be your issue.
That makes sense.
Because you don't want to just throw one in there and then, you know, it'd be something else.
So obviously we went on ahead and replaced that particular ignition coil, but when they were in there, they noticed that around the spark plug in that little area, there was traces of oil in there where there should not be.
So you got a little oil residue in there, so I'll clean them out.
No, that's not good, right? Obviously, because it affects the
Oil residue on there.
Yep. Can't take them out because the engine's hot. So that indicated to them that the valve cover gasket was going bad. So I made another appointment and had them replace the whole valve cover gasket. So that was repaired. I also had them replace the other 3 ignition coils, and we put in all 4 new spark plugs. So all of that was refreshed all at the same time. I think we're about at over 100,000 or just about at 100,000 miles. And of course, at that time, we went on ahead and had an oil change done just so that everything was running smooth. But that was pretty scary to have your car kind of sputtering like that while you're on the highway, you're in the middle of nowhere. That's not a good feeling, but apparently it's a misfire. It's not that big a deal. Just replace the ignition coil and you're good to go, and that's what we did. And the engine is purring along just like new. So now we're into 2022, and in September of 2022 we decided to go ahead and have the rear suspension taken care of so that the whole car was whole again. So again, all of the rear suspension assembly had to be removed, bump stops, all of that stuff, and shocks were just shot, and all of that had to be replaced. So we did all that, and since they were dealing with the back of the car, we had new brake rotors and new rear brake pads put on as well. So now that all 4 corners of the suspension have been repaired and replaced, the car does ride like new again. It rides so much better, which is important on these terrible New York roads. However, on the road I happen to be on right now is in Connecticut, and it's freshly paved, so it's super smooth. Before the suspension work was done, we put on all-season tires, which seemed to help with the ride, but ultimately that was just a Band-Aid. The shocks were gone. The all-season tires, which were still more performance-biased, provided more of a softer ride because of the rubber itself. The original equipment tires were something like the Continental Sport Contact 2s back then, but I'm sure they've progressed since then. Putting more aggressive rubber on this new suspension is probably the optimal combination. But nonetheless, we've got the all seasons on now, and the ride is super buttery smooth, as it should be, and as the car was when it was new. Also in late 2022, I noticed that a strange whirring sound started to happen towards the front of the car, and it was very annoying, and you hear it more and more during highway speeds. I didn't hear it when the car was just driving around town, but on highway speeds, this whirring noise just became really, really loud, so much so that, you know, it overtook my radio. Also around that time, I noticed that it sounded like a strange sound coming from the middle of the car related to the exhaust. And so clearly there was an exhaust pipe leak of some kind. So took it to JC Auto, they put it up on the lift, and the front bearings, at the time we thought only the right front bearing was bad. So we had the whole hub and bearing assembly replaced.
See, that's the hub. This is the carrier, okay? And this goes like this. Okay?
I see.
This is the bolt actually holds the axle, and this goes like this.
Gotcha.
The four-wheel drive is similar.
Right, it's similar
The front
to
is
that.
a little different. So it's the front, the strut mounts on top.
But this is the rear one. Okay, gotcha.
This is the rear one, yeah.
Gotcha. So there's that big bolt, and both of these pieces right here got replaced, right?
But now you're getting every piece, you see?
Yeah, so I see. So this whole, both pieces had to end up being, because this is just no good.
Normally we just buy the bearing.
Yeah.
And we reuse the housing.
Right.
But this thing is shot. And the reason is you're going to see the way they wear it? Yeah, see the shiny. Water gets in it. That's big.
Gotcha. Sure.
Come on. Yeah.
Gotcha. Look at
See
that.
it?
Yeah. Wow, cool. Okay. And of course, the center pipe of the car, the center exhaust pipe of the car was rusted through, and therefore a hole had formed and it was just leaking exhaust. Goes all the way back there. That's where the brake is.
Okay. See, this is the pressure clamps, they're all together.
Gotcha. Hold it together.
She is routed away, and it was leaking right in between.
In between there, yeah, I see that crack in between. So this whole piece.
Yeah, this is called a center muffler, right?
Center muffler.
Okay, and what you see over here, this is coming apart. That's what's leaking over here too.
Oh wow, look at that.
It's just rust.
Yeah, it's 17
So like
years
my
old.
body.
Like all of us.
It's old.
So we had that center pipe removed. So it had the right rear hub and bearing replaced, center pipe replaced, got it back out on the road, and I still heard that loud whirring noise coming from the front of the car. Clearly it was the other left side bearing that also needed to be replaced. So we went on ahead and had that one done too. Probably should have had them both done at the same time. Live and learn, but we had them both done soon after each other. And now the car is running just as smooth from the front end as possible. No strange noises. And that takes us to 2023, and the red battery light came on the dashboard. And let me tell you, when that happens, you should pull over and get the car to a repair shop right away. I didn't do that. I tried to push it and run more errands to, since the car still started. At one of my errands, I had parked the car, came back to the car, and the car refused to start. The battery was gone, died, and it turns out when I had the car diagnosed at JC Auto, the alternator had gone bad, and so the battery and the alternator had to be replaced. The alternator going bad after 18 years, I chalk that up to normal wear and tear. I mean, nothing lasts forever. Same thing with the suspension. The suspension can't last forever, being abused by these terrible roads we drive on every day. So I think most of the repairs we've done, although expensive to do in a compressed 3-year period of time, were simply because of wear and tear. When I look across the background of this whole 18-year experience with this car, the car has been pretty much flawless for most of its life. There hasn't been really any issue with the car until the last few years. So I guess that begs the question, why keep this car so long? Well, this car fits our family. We have 2 small dogs, so we need a place to carry them in the rear of the car, and a station wagon provides that. This car is primarily used by my wife, and she prefers a much lower driving position, and she actually likes a sportier and better handling vehicle as her daily driver. And as an ultra sport version with the sporty suspension and the lower center of gravity compared to a crossover, she finds this a pleasurable car to drive. The other thing that's unique about this car, of course, is the manual transmission. Manual transmission cars are such a rarity nowadays, and my wife really enjoys driving a manual. I do too. So this combination of elements make this car very pleasing to us and fits our family dynamic very, very well. My wife did say after the alternator failed that, maybe it is time to start looking and seeing what else is out there, and that's fair. From 2020 to 2023, we've spent over $13,000 in repairs on this car, and that's a lot of money. When you kind of do the math on that, that's about $361 a month. So what car could we have bought and paid with no money down for the last, 3 years, I don't know what that is. But we've had no intention of selling this car. We've had no auto loan for so many years, and the car has been so reliable with no maintenance issues. Investing this money in the last few years seemed reasonable to us. If you look at the whole term that we've had this car, it's been really trouble-free, and it's totally understandable that things wear out now. Nonetheless, I probably have a sentimental connection to this car. I really love the design of this car. I love the manual transmission. It may not have that much power. This car only has 170 horsepower and 166 foot-pounds of torque, but it does have all-wheel drive. It does have a really good suspension setup that handles turns quite nicely. But yes, there are much more modern cars, but there's very few that offer a manual transmission plus place for our dogs in the rear of the vehicle. So, wow, this car handles super well. Look at these turns. It's just a really nice handling car. As an 18-year-old car, you would think there would be squeaks and rattles and all kinds of noises. No, this car remains rock solid. And that also impresses us. It's quiet in here. It's just solid. And so I have to commend Audi for their build quality that has lasted all of this time. Great job, Audi. This car is still a fun car to drive. You know, again, it doesn't have the power, and I think that's the one downside to this older car. It just doesn't have the horsepower of today's modern cars. But what it does have is handling. It does lean more than, say, my Porsche 911, but I have a Porsche 911, you know, so I really do enjoy the way this car feels on the road, especially now that all of the suspension work has been done. It's back to where it should be. The car is running super smooth now, super happy with it. I just think that, you know, after spending $13,000 on the car, that is a lot of money. You know, it does seem like, yikes, that's a lot of cash to be putting on an 18-year-old car at this point, but there you go. It's a unique combination of things that we like, and it fits our family. And it's simply not a crossover SUV. I mean, eventually we may have to get one, but our preference is we like cars as opposed to trucks. You know, we like the handling characteristics of being lower to the ground. It just suits our driving style. And again, there are great SUVs out there. Don't get me wrong, but we wish the Audi RS4 was available in the United States. I think that's the thing. That would be the perfect car to move into. Nonetheless, that's the video. Tell us what you think of the repairs that we've made. Do you have an older car? Have you experienced these kinds of repairs that were needed? And are you planning to keep your older car into the future? Let us know your thoughts below. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Safe driving, everyone. I'm going to enjoy the rest of this road. Yeah! Woo! This car is so much fun.